small companies, how would you advise them? That small companies, SMEs, that can't really afford to hire services of a tax consultant. How would you advise them to prepare for tax audits in during this period? As regard the type of documentation they should maintain going forward, even if they've not done so maybe this year, maybe during the course of the business, or from this program, we can educate them that these are the most important documents that you must have. Top 5 documents that companies should maintain for tax audit purpose in the future.
Okay, let me start with the documents. Irrespective of the size of the business,
Okay.
irrespective of the size of whether you're a startup, whether you're a small company, or whether you're a big company,
Yes.
documentation is very, very key. You understand?
I agree.
Record keeping is very, very key. Even apart from tax purpose.
Yes.
If you want to value how well you are doing in your business, you need those records are important.
Exactly.
If you want to tell somebody to come and invest in your business, you need those records to prove or to show to the other party that, oh, this is the value of my business. So apart from tax, documentation is very key. You understand?
Yes.
But
Okay.
for small businesses, really, it's important that you ensure that you separate personal expenses from business expenses. That's
Sure.
one. It's very, very critical. What I mean by that is that the banking of those transactions, for instance,
Yes.
should not be lumped together. The banking of business transactions should be separated from personal businesses.
Sure.
And for all the expenses that you make, you should have some form of records or the other to keep them. If you are a company, it's important that you have detailed level of records to support those expenses, receipts, invoices. You understand? Those are basic records that should be kept. I've seen instances where it's a one-man business. The man keeps his record on an Excel sheet. He maps it to he maps the record to his bank statement.
Okay.
And at any point in time, he can tell you that, okay, this particular amount, this is what I've spent it on these dates, and this is the record. You understand? It doesn't have to be the formal records that we have in accounting.
Yes.
You understand? But some level of evidence to actually be able to show and trace that transaction will be sufficient.
Okay, that point is noted. So my next question would be that after the tax audit exercise, do tax auditors, do they share that information of their findings? Is it expected that they share it with the taxpayers that, okay, we have gone through your books, and this is what we found, that you have not remitted this XYZ? Do they get to share that information with you, or do they just leave, go back to their office, and then send you one beautiful letter?
Thank you for that. The law really does not require them to share that information.
Okay.
As by the strict provision of the law does not require them to share their findings. Okay, but some of the tax authorities have that as part of their internal their audit procedures, in order to reduce the time, the reconciliation time or period. Because it will be fine if I share my tax audit findings with you and we trash it out at that stage before I raise assessment. You understand? We won't have a back and forth. Because if you go ahead and raise assessment based on your own findings, it's most likely that I would object to that, because I've not even reviewed what you have found before raising that assessment. So I think in the spirit of fairness, it will be ideal that you share the findings. The tax authority share the findings now, and then trash it out before you issue an assessment. Well, like I said, we have several tax authorities. There are some tax authorities that would not do that.
Okay.
Once they are done, they will raise assessments.
They will raise an assessment. Okay, coming to the issue of raising an assessment, what happens when an assessment is raised and then maybe a very high assessment is being raised, which does not represent the true position of the liability from the company? What happens? What would you advise the taxpayer to do in order to interject, or rather to defend themselves as against that position that have been taken by the tax authority?
Yeah, the procedure is actually laid down by in the tax law. Once an assessment is raised by the tax authority, the normal thing is for the taxpayer to, either the taxpayer himself or the consultant, is to review the assessment vis-a-vis the books of the taxpayer.
Yes.
Okay, if the taxpayer agrees with that position, the next thing is to pay the liability.
Yes.
But if the taxpayer does not agree, the next thing is to write a letter of objection.
Okay, so you write a letter of objection to the tax authority.
The tax authority, stating the fact that you are objecting to the assessment and your basis of objection. Okay, and if there is any part of the assessment that you agree with,
yes,
you let them know in that letter.
Okay. Many companies, I'm also going to ask another question. Okay, that there's a standard, there's actually a standard procedure for dispute resolution between tax authorities and taxpayers, especially when there's no agreement on that the assessment being raised by the tax authority. So my question is, what is the procedure after writing to the tax authority to say, I don't agree with you?
Now,
I'm not paying you this 10 million naira that you're demanding for because I don't feel, do you understand?
Yeah.
So afterward, maybe the tax authority still resists and say, no, this is our position and we are maintaining it.
If the tax authority is resisting or is rejecting that, the tax authority is supposed to write you a notice of refusal to amend.
Okay.
I mean, meaning that I don't agree with your letter and I'm still maintaining my position.
Yes.
And once you have that letter, you have a right of appeal to the tax appeal tribunal.
Okay, we have a tax appeal tribunal in Nigeria.
Yes, we have a tax appeal tribunal in Nigeria. Here is tax cases. You understand?
Okay.
So the taxpayer can make an appeal to the tax appeal tribunal.
Okay, but what if the tax authority, or rather the taxpayer, is they don't want to go to the tax tribunal, they just want to have like a sit-down meeting and agree? Is there room for you to have that kind of formal dispute resolution with the tax authority to agree on a certain position?
Before the tax, in the first instance, before the tax authority will write you a notice of refusal to amend, that means it has exhausted its own internal resolution or reconciliation process or procedure.
Okay.
You understand? Because to the tax authority too, there's a cost to going to appeal tribunal. Because the provision of the law is that whatever we are contesting remains in abeyance.
Yes.
That means you are not getting anything from that until it's determined.
Okay.
And depending on when that will be, look at the tax appeal tribunal was just reconstituted recently after how long? You understand? So the tax authority too would ensure that it has exhausted its internal resolution
which I think is good. Okay, so my next question will be, okay, so many taxpayer companies okay, so as a company, Andersen Tax, what would your advice be to taxpayer in terms of tax planning? Because I feel that if you have a proper tax planning and a proper tax structure in place, in view of what is going to happen at the end of the year, or in view of the tax audit, for instance, you'll be in a better position when all this is happening. So you would have determined, you would have helped the company, put them in a better position.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think we've come to an era where taxpayers have to be proactive rather than being reactive.
Yes.
And then that's come to the area where tax is pushed to the tax issues are pushed to the bottom of the table or the bottom of the list for consideration.
Okay.
So for a business to really survive, okay, it's important that you take a holistic approach to tax.
Yes.
You understand? So that from the very beginning you would have you plan and determine how you want to carry out your business and the tax implication or tax implications of the various activities involving your business.
Okay.
So that holistic view will keep you away from surprises.
Yes.
You understand?
Exactly.
And even when the tax authority is coming back with something different, you know that, oh no, this is not it, because I know I have the big picture of what it should be in
What
mind.
it should be, which is good, which I would encourage all taxpayers, especially companies, to always hire the services, if you can afford it, of a tax consultant or a tax consulting firm like Andersen Tax Nigeria to help you with your tax planning and structure your taxes effectively, so that you can have that holistic view.
Exactly.
And plan towards it, and so you don't come up with surprises from the tax authorities. So my last question is, this has always been an issue.
Okay.
A lot of companies, are unpaid tax agents to the tax authorities. So they collect VAT on behalf of the government, of the tax authority. They also collect withholding taxes from the on behalf of the tax authorities, which they are supposed to remit to the tax authority as at when due. But you find out that most often, including payee as well, most often they don't remit. They push this money from January to the end of the year, and at the end of the day, when the tax authority come, maybe after tax audit, and they throw in their liability, this is the assessment. Of course, it will come with penalties and all of that, all of the charges and interest, of course. My question would be, is it even right, or is it a strategy, or is it part of tax planning to push this tax remittance from one as at when it's supposed to be paid to another, to stretch it? Is there a way of pushing or using that money for business purposes? Or, I don't know.
That's coming taxpayers that carry out that kind of scheme, or they are actually violating the provisions of the law.
Exactly.
You understand? Like I said, we are in a self-assessment regime. The law allows you to self-determine what your tax is. But there's also a time within which you are supposed to remit. Okay? Where you have an obligation as agents of government to deduct.
Yes.
There's also a time limit within which you are supposed to remit that tax. And failure to do that attracts penalties and interest.
Yes.
So there is no tax planning in that. Because at the end of the day, you'll be accumulating penalties and interest, which when you add together might even be up to or a sizable portion of the tax liability.
And when the tax authority comes for tax enforcement, and maybe, or what they call it, tax enforcement, and they seal up your company, and they start calling on Andersen Tax Nigeria to come save the day.
So what we advise really is tax planning starts from compliance.
Exactly.
You understand?
Yes.
It starts from compliance. When you are compliance as to registration, returns, and remittances, then you can take it up further with the tax authority, whatever it is.
So but it is wrong for companies to delay remittance of taxes, especially when it's a third-party remittance.
Is absolutely.
For me, I feel it's a bigger crime because you are taking from the taxpayers and you're not giving it back to the tax authority. It's not your money.
Exactly.
You are just an agent in between. So I would encourage a lot of our corporate taxpayers, if they are practicing such scheme, it should be stopped. It's a crime, and it's punishable under the law. And even though some companies say it, because the penalties have not been reviewed over the years, it's not really much.
But even currently, the penalties and the interest cumulatively,
yes,
is huge.
It's huge.
For state taxes, 10% penalty and 21% interest, which is current practice. For federal, 10% and 19%, cumulatively 29%. So it's not a small amount of money.
Yes.
To.
And it can actually ruin the business, because at the end of the day, that lump sum hits you and it can throw you off your business.
Exactly. So I think the ideal thing is to holistically look at your tax affairs.
Okay.
And plan based on the provision of the laws, and you have everything under control.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So, final advice to the taxpayers, especially the corporate taxpayers, in line with tax audits. What would you advise them as Andersen Tax?
Yeah, our advice would be that correct documentation should be kept at all times. Okay. There's no transaction that is too small. There's no transaction that is too big.
Yes.
The onus of proof is on the taxpayers.
Okay.
You understand? And the work of a tax consultant would be so easy if the taxpayer keeps the correct, the adequate documentation. So it's key that any transaction you are doing, you keep the records in anticipation of a tax audit exercise. And the second advice would be that the era of pushing tax to the bottom of the list is gone.
Okay.
A proactive approach to your tax affairs is what will see you through at this point in time. And that's why it would also be good to work with a professional that would guide you accordingly.
Thank you so much, Mr. Samuel, for coming on Tax 101. It's actually been a delight having this conversation with you. And I'm sure a lot of our taxpayers have learned one or two things today. Then now we know that it's important for you to put your documentations together. And tax audit is actually backed by the law. So don't pull any form of resistance. We rather advise you submit all documentation in your possession and take it forward from there. If you don't agree with the position of the tax authority at the end of the tax audit, you have the right to put in for objection and write officially and state. And also when you're writing for an objection, please remember to back it up with documentation. Tax authorities, they work with documentation. They're not going to take your words for it. They work with evidence. So that's it on Tax 101 today. Thank you so much for joining us. The conversation might have ended, but you can still join us on our Twitter page at NG Tax 101. And if you have any questions or comments, you can come to our page at NG Tax 101, or you can DM us if it's a private message, and we can direct or help you on some of your tax matters. Thank you. My name is Elizabeth Aluko. Like I always say, paying your taxes is a way of building the future for the next generation. Thank you. Have a great day. Thank you so much.